I promised you that we are going to work on it. And it's not a work that is a single event, it's a process. And we'll continue to work on it for the energy sector to become better.
Have you heard of calls for a timetable?
Ask those who want to bring it. The ECG says that there is no timetable coming. Why do you want to bring a timetable? What purpose? Why would somebody get up and wish evil or bad for the country?
It's good for the government to bring timetable for the do so, because none of us know anything about it. You can be in the house, you'll be sweating in the house. Once you have children in the house too, it's too painful. By now, it's supposed to bring it out.
I live at Alajo. Last night, I was sleeping around 12 midnight. The light went off. It came in around the timetable. I think
Son of Mudum light, no question when yet, or made doom light, 7 o'clock. Ebe do 10, no maso. Ebe do 12, no master doom light, son. I had them one. There's a 3, 4, no maso. Yes, sir, and yet, and Crofonio man so, your man so say.
It's obvious that the doom so is there. And so I think it will be okay for us to give us the timetable, because they can't tell us that there's no doom so whilst every day we sleep in the darkness. So it will be better to give us the timetable.
It's been handled in an awful manner. I saw my brother Napuz. I'm being charitable. This is off the cuff comments, and then the apology or the apologetic manner in which his ministry had to respond. But you know, we are not a nation of fools, you know. And it's brought the matter up even more clearly to the point that people are now saying, look, John Mahama's time, even with all the doomsday, we knew when the lights were going to be off. We knew we had to go and buy generators. We knew we could only accept clients for hairdressing or barbering at this time. We knew that this was the situation. Tell us. And you had to be ordered by the PURC to give us a doomsday timetable. And I think that speaks badly of them. They don't respect us, the people. It's been a horrible experience. And you're lucky that we have the lights on today as you are interviewing me.
Well, these are the concerns that characterizes the many issues that the Ghanaian people, lots of us, have been going through when it comes to the unannounced power outages, which we call doomsday in our local palace. Well, the energy minister does not want what is happening now to us to be classified as doomsday in the sense of the word, but for the experiences that you and I have, it defines what we are going through. He says that if you make a demand for a timetable, then produce one yourself. That statement got a lot of people, both stakeholders in the sector, politicians, and consumers of electricity, angered, livid, as to why, after a long period of silence by the Minister of Energy about this unannounced power outages, we would hear him talk about producing one ourselves if we need one. During the week as well, the Public Utilities Workers Union indicated that the ECG cannot be blamed for what is happening, because if it was just about the 630 transformers that they say have been overloaded as a result of increased power demand, they operate over 33,000 transformers. So 630 of them having been overloaded cannot be the reason why we're experiencing these power outages. Well, ECG corroborates that position as well. That's why they couldn't produce a timetable even when PURC had directed them to do so. So what is the problem? Why are we going through these unannounced power outages? Is it a financial problem? Because we understand that some $50 million that is needed to buy fuel is not available. That's what we're hearing. So what is the problem? That's a conversation that we're having this morning here on Key Point on TV3. We're also live on 3FM 92.7. Beyond this, the Supreme Court has dismissed the application filed by South Day Member of Parliament Nelson Roxon Dafiamepo challenging the approval of new ministerial and deputy ministerial nominees. Now, in that unanimous decision earlier in the week, a 5-member panel of the court held that the application was frivolous and an abuse of the court processes. We will take a critical look at that, and that is a conversation that we're having this morning, especially on the back of the concerns that the NDC raised about the scheduling of cases by the Chief Justice, specifically pertaining to this matter. Well, on the back of this, the lawyers of Parliament have written to the Supreme Court for an expedited hearing of the cases against the anti-LGBTQ plus bill. We'll have a conversation on that as well. These are the key issues that have concern to you and I, the Ghanaian people, throughout the week, and it will definitely find space here on Key Point. Together with my guests, we will have a conversation this morning. Welcome to Key Point. My name is Alfred Ocansey. This is the Easter edition of Key Point. After this quick break, my guests will join me. We'll start the conversation. Stay with us.
It's a perfect opportunity this Ramadan Kareem to make it an extra special season for your family and friends with Melcom. With affordable products ranging from groceries, electronics, homeware, kitchenware, furniture and more, you've got all your needs sorted. Ramadan Mubarak to our Muslim family. Terms and conditions apply. Melcom, where Ghana shops.
We know the dream is big. We know the passion gets you going, and you have the potential to make great strides. The Chartered Institute of Marketing, Ghana, has always been an avid supporter of industry excellence and innovation. This is why we are excited to announce the CIMG Professional Marketing Qualifications. CIMG has designed practical courses to help you make that dream a reality right here in Ghana. We are geared up and ready to support you on this journey to becoming a world-class professional marketer. Register today and be on your way to greatness. For more information, call us on 055-274-6592. Visit our website www.cimghana.org or email us on info@cimghana.org. Chartered Institute of Marketing Ghana, working for Ghana.
We called,
you came through,
we searched,
and we selected the finest talent for this year's Talenta Kids Inter-School Competition.
The earth was vibrant and majestic sand.
Our river style of no infiltration.
This season guarantees compelling twists with the inventive STEM child and inter-school competition, ensuring intrigue and jaw-dropping moments.
Make a date with us this and every Sunday at 4 p.m. right here with our carefully selected contestants who wow you and captivate you with their best talents,
providing an unforgettable experience. Talented Kids free to play.
Talented Kids shows on TV3 Sunday at 4 p.m.
Powered by Indomie. Sponsored by Coco Plus.
Deluxe acrylic paint.
Frutelli Calipo.
Vitamilk.
Pepsodent Cavity Fighter. CTIW Foundation.
And supported by
Mac Brown's Kitchen. Mac Brown's Kitchen.
I'm ready to send me to Mac Brown's Kitchen. New season, new stations. Hey, Mara. Hey, Mac Brown's Kitchen. Oh, na want TV so I check. I knew who ya check. But the Namia Yeni ain't Chakrano. But TV3. Mimi Devia. 5 to 6 p.m. Nana Yabasha Wati. Minimi Kunumi Mayabasha Sesako. Ghana Fodo. Hey, that's it.
McBrown's Kitchen shows this and every Saturday at 5 p.m. on TV3.
Brought to you by
Bar Herbal. Akuma Onion Paste.
Your favorite programs on TV3 are switching times. Sports Station, which reviews the best sports action on Monday, is now at 5 p.m. And GPL Express eases you into the weekend at 2 p.m. on Saturday. So same shows, revamped, more analytical, but more engaging and better on TV3.
Hello everyone, this is Lordina the Soprano. Join me this Saturday on the Ladies' Circle. It promises to be exciting.
During Easter, they say it's a time for Christians to think about their lives and also free themselves from sin.
The whole idea of Jesus coming into this world, I think, was geared towards Easter because his birth was in relation to him coming to die.
Our Gen Z generations and those to come after will not really understand the celebratory aspect of Easter.
Shamo? Who that is?
Are we going to get a bonus if we get it right?
No, relax. The timer is not yet up.
Thomas!
Vashti.
Yeah. Who is Vashti?
You don't know
Who is
Vashti.
Vashti is the one Esther replaced.
Have you ever missed church on Easter because you were tired from all of the other activities that you indulged in? Oh my God, Lordina is guilty.
Lordina?
You jammed a bit too much and didn't make it to church?
No.
The Ladies' Circle shows this Saturday at 6 p.m. on TV3.
Brought to you by Yaz Sanitary Pad,
Onga, Yumvita,
MTN, Cowbell, Our Milk.
Welcome back to Key Point here on TV3. We're live on 3FM 92.7, also on TV3 Ghana on Facebook and DSTV channel 279, all across the world on 3news.com. Now, this week we witnessed a decision by the Supreme Court after what eventually we got to know was an application for an expedited hearing by the Attorney General, Godfred Yeboah-Adame, for the case of Nelson Roxon Dafiamepo against the approval of these ministerial nominees who had gone through vetting by Parliament. That case was dismissed unanimously. Prior to the hearing of this case at the Supreme Court earlier in the week, the NDC had raised concerns about the scheduling of cases. Reason why they believe that the Chief Justice is not serving justice because of this particular case in question. Eventually, a decision was taken. After the court ruling on that day, the Attorney General spoke to journalists and gave a few pointers and some revelations as to why this case was called earlier or heard earlier than other cases that had been filed, specifically the Dr. Amanda Odoi and Richard Delaskai cases. Take a look at the Attorney General.
If we file an application in the Supreme Court of Ghana, it takes even 3 months for you to have a date for hearing. It is only after a party has made an application for an expeditious determination of the process that the matter will come up for hearing. And indeed, in the record will show that this particular case, for the record, it must be indicated that I specifically applied for an expeditious determination of the matter. I applied for an expedited hearing of the application. Back in the days, if we file an application in the Supreme Court of Ghana, it takes even 3 months for you to have a date for hearing. It is only after a party has made an application for an expeditious determination of the process that the matter will come up for hearing. And indeed, in the record will show that this particular case, for the record, it must be indicated that I specifically applied for an expeditious determination of the matter. I applied for an expedited hearing of the application.
Well, so that's the Attorney General and Minister of Justice Godfrey Diaboa Dame there, giving that pointer of what he did and reason why this case was called. There was a question that was put to him as to why, in the case of Richard Sky and also Amanda Odoi, he did not, or he was not minded to also apply for expedited hearing. That particular issue became an issue of reference when he gave the response that he is not a plaintiff in this case as well. Now, as to whether the other party in the case of Nelson Roxin Daffy-Amepo, was served a notice of this expedited hearing or application, for that matter, by the Attorney General, is another conversation altogether. Recall that Nelson Roxin Daffy-Amepo's lawyers were not in court. And they explained why. And we're going to play that explanation to you, as given by Nipapo Samoa Ado, who is the lawyer for Nelson Roxin Daffy-Amepo. And what happened when the court bailiff went to his chambers. We got a CCTV video of that particular incident. So we would have a conversation on that and understand the processes that goes into the application of expedited hearing in our Supreme Court and what processes are employed. So we would have a conversation on that this morning. I've been joined in studio by Professor Enoch Enchi, who is a governance and policy analyst. He's the Dean of the School of Business at the Academic City University and an author as well. And this week he's launched his book, of which I was there to witness. We would have a brief one on this as we go. Professor Enoch Enchi, good morning, welcome.
Good morning, Alfred, and I'm thrilled to be here to share knowledge and wisdom with your audience.
Also joining us is the Boko Central Member of Parliament. He is a private legal practitioner and also a member of a number of committees in Parliament. He's held a number of ministerial portfolios in this country. The Honorable Mahama Yaraga is our guest. Honorable Mahama Yaraga, good morning, welcome.
Good morning, good morning. Good morning to your viewers and listeners.
And thank you very much for making the time to also join us here on Key Point. Professor Ransford Jampo is a professor of political science at the University of Ghana, Legon. Professor Ransford Jampo is joining us as well, and an author as well. Let me just put it on record. Professor Ransford Jampo, good morning. Welcome.
Morning. Thanks for having me here. Why do you always make me sit close to you?
It is not my doing. It is the doing of the people who put us together. Also joining us is private legal practitioner, lawyer Kingsley Amwakon-Boadu, who is a member of the New Patriotic Party. He's also a private legal practitioner. Counsel, good morning. Welcome.
Good morning. My name is Kingsley Amwakwa.
Boadu.
I guess that's the reason why you
Kingsley
jumped over me.
Amwakwa Boadu. Yes.
Because that's the only why you jumped over me.
Indeed. Welcome.
He wasn't sure.
Indeed.
Amwakwa Boadu.
Welcome. This is
And good morning to viewers, listeners, and my fellow panelists.
That's right. And I think this is your first engagement with us here on Key Point.
It is so.
Welcome. Also joining us on Zoom later is Professor Bafo Ajimendia, who is a former United Nations advisor on governance. He's a governance who's going to be joining us as well. And we have lawyer Bobby Banson, who is also a private legal practitioner. He's a lecturer at the Ghana School of Law, what you popularly call Makola. He'll be joining us as well. Gentlemen, thank you so much for making the time to be here. Happy Easter to you all is in order, and taking the time to be here with us at a time like this is really appreciated. Thank you so much. Now, let me start off with you, Professor Ocansey. I mean, following the happenings in court, and you do know it is as a result of that this Nelson Roxton Dafiamoko case that the Speaker of Parliament held on to the approval, the parliamentary approval of ministerial nominees, which is in limbo. We'll find out what's going to happen next after this decision by the Supreme Court. But what's striking is that in court, the lawyers for the Speaker agreed with the Attorney General's argument. This case was thrown out eventually, but the NDC had concerns. What's your take on how things played out this week?
Thank you once again, Alfred. I think that peace is more precious than perfection. So we have our Constitution, and the Constitution is clear about separation of powers and rule of law. When we come to our Constitution, the mandates, in fact, power actually belongs to the people, but functions are divided into the three arms of government. So we have the executive, which have their function. We have the legislature, and then we have the judiciary. We know that laws are made by Parliament. So the Speaker, in most places like in America, the Speaker is the law. They make the law. Now, when they make the law, which is a bill, it goes to the President to assent to it, it becomes a law. And then anytime there's a dispute, we have the judiciary that interprets that law. So the functions are very clear out there. I think that is the beauty of democracy. What the Speaker did was right, to say that we sent our bill to the President to sign. And I've said it here a couple of times that values are priceless. There's nothing that you can exchange values for. So what is happening now is that we have a tussle between the law and reasoning and processes, and then applications. In the end, the people suffer because we have some ministers to approve so that they can begin to work. We also have a bill that should be on the desk of the President to append his signature so that it becomes a law. All this should be done, but it should be done in the interest of Ghanaians. So the question here is, what do Ghanaians want? I think that Ghanaians want the President to sign that bill to become a law so that our values as a sovereign nation will be protected. In the same way, we also expect Parliament to make sure that they approve these ministers so that they can begin to work. Because as at now, they are not working and government business is lying idle.
You see, and taking into consideration that particular issue you raise as well, as we speak, a decision has to be taken. Members of Parliament have to be recalled. But as you're talking about this bill also being passed, the anti-LGBTQ plus bill, which is the foundation for all what is happening now.
Yes.
The President is making reference to a number of cases, or that is the Attorney General's advice to him. There's a number of cases in court, reason why he should tarry a while. in signing on to this?
Yes, you see, the problem is that there's something called equalization. The Constitution is very clear. You know, I know law is a very authoritative language, but it's very clear that when we say separation of powers, it means that the powers are equal. I have said here that if you look at the U.S. Constitution, where I stayed for over 20 years, the proponents of U.S. Constitution, the original Constitution that we copied from, is saying that the founding fathers believed that the executive could be more powerful than the other ones, as we are practicing here. But the weakest link there is the judiciary. Why? Because anytime Parliament is making law, but we want the judiciary to come and interpret the laws the way they deem fit. I believe that Nelson's case, according to what we are hearing and what we've seen from the newspapers and everything going on, Nelson's case was sent 2 clear weeks before this issue came out. So we have a bill in front of the president. The president have not signed it. We saw the Ministry of Finance saying that they could lose $3.8 billion when the president signed that bill. So people thought that our democracy, our sovereignty is being influenced by other cultures. So it all boils down to values. What is our values? Do we as a people want to talk about sexual orientation, and then we look at the process that Parliament have gone through to make sure that this becomes a bill that the president should append his signature to, or the president will decide not to sign? In fact, we have a dilemma here, and this is an ethical dilemma that we all have to pass. Yes, like I said, I'm going to repeat it. The president should append his signature to that bill to become a law, because that is the values. So sexual orientation, you know, is not a right. It's a privilege. And when we come to scholarly work, there's a difference between privileges and right. So when somebody is a pedophile, you know, he aligns to that is the way he wants to sleep with kids. But the law will prevent that person, that you cannot do that, because the lowest bar in our society, the values that we have, is against that practice. And that is why even in US, when you go to jail for child pornography or anything, you are not allowed to stay close to 5 miles to any school, because that is their values. So if any country loses their values, then you are lost. And that is why it is important for us to uphold to our values, especially when Parliament have all agreed, bipartisan bill, to this, that all that the president needed to do was to sign. But unfortunately, if you look at what is going on, Parliament is not speaking with one voice, because most of them want to please the president. That is not how it's supposed to be. Because once you become a parliament, and here we go to our constitution, which is creating that problem. I propose that parliamentarians should not be selected to be part of the executive as ministers, because now everybody is trying to catch the eye of the president instead of the eye of the speaker.
Oh, and that constitutional review process is one that Professor Jampo has been on for quite a while now. And there are recommendations to cure this sickness that you have just made reference to. But we are here after spending so much money going through that constitutional review process. The commitment to implement these recommendations is one that also is in limbo now. But this is what the concerns of the NDC are. Earlier in the week, even before this court case, the hearing of this case at the Supreme Court, the NDC raised these concerns. And you take a look at this. One, they say that this decision by the court, the Supreme Court, to hear the Nelson Rockton Dafia-Mokwa case was a ploy by the Chief Justice to fast-track the determination of the Dafia-Mokwa suit, while determination of the Richard Sky suit is deliberately and unduly delayed, to enable the president shelve the anti-LGBTQ plus bill. They continue that arbitrary exercise of administrative discretion by the Chief Justice, particularly in scheduling of cases in the Supreme Court, goes to fortify the high perception of bias on the part of the judiciary. Such judicial manipulations go to confirm growing public perception that the current Chief Justice is a pliant accomplice and arbiter of the misrule of the despotic Akufo-Addo-Bawumia MPP government. There can be no earthly justification for listing the Dafia-Mokwa case ahead of the Richard Sky case, and they demand an immediate rectification of this travesty. It says there cannot be any earthly justification for this, what happened this week. Well, the justification or explanation to this, as given by the Attorney General, was that he applied for an expedited hearing. What we got to know, and I'll come to you on this point, Honorable Mayaga, that what is the standard procedure if you want an expedited hearing? Because in what we have observed, at least in the recent past and what's happening now, is that in the case of Nelson Rock's interference, was there any return date given for this particular suit that he applied for or filed at the Supreme Court?
Thank you very much, and once again, good morning to viewers and colleagues on the panel. We can go into legal niceties and etc. But I think that it is important to appreciate the broader context of what is happening. It is essentially a standoff between the executive arm of government and the legislative arm of government, in which both sides are maneuvering to achieve their objectives. And in the maneuver, they are both exploiting the opportunities available in the use of the judiciary as an arbiter and a manager of disputes between the two arms of government as stipulated by the Constitution. And so essentially it is a political tussle, not really, in my opinion, a fine legal issue, if you asked me. For instance, the question you asked, generally it is the practice that when you initiate an action in the Supreme Court, there are timelines within which certain steps must be taken. But at the same time, an interested party can seek to rush the court by requesting that the court undertakes an expedited hearing of his or her case if the exigencies dictate that. And the decision to expedite hearing of a matter is purely an administrative matter that the Chief Justice will have to determine and take a decision on. In all sincerity and honesty, I honestly will not fault the Chief Justice or the Supreme Court in this matter. And I'm happy that the Speaker's lawyers have also taken the step that the Attorney General took, which is also write to the Chief Justice and also demand expedited hearing of their case. It is the reaction of the Chief Justice in this instance that will determine whether the Chief Justice is biased or not. She's been given the opportunity to determine whether or not she will act in a biased manner or not. So I will not rush in passing judgment about the conduct of the Chief Justice, because the Attorney General has a good defense, which is that, look, you brought an action against me, and I feel I need to have the matter heard expeditiously. So I've written to the Chief Justice. There's a debate among the lawyers as to whether or not when the Attorney General writes to the Chief Justice demanding expedited hearing of a matter in which he is involved, he should copy the lawyers on the other side or not. In fact, I don't think that is legally mandatory.
Really? Because that was one of the major arguments of the likes of Edujita Maklo when I spoke to him within the week, that in the rules of court allow for this expedited hearing. But what you do is that you file a formal application, and that would enable the other party to be duly served. Then the parties appear before maybe a judge or a panel of judges seized with the jurisdiction to hear the matter, and they will now determine or not whether this application of the expedited hearing should be granted, and the other party should be duly notified so they know.
That is when there is a return date. That is when a date has been fixed to hear the matter. And if you now seek expedited, hearing of the matter, it means that you want to abridge time. You want an early hearing. And the other side has already been notified that the case is going to be heard on the 25th. You want it to be heard on the 12th. So in that instance, it is only fair and proper that it is an application, and that the other side, who is sitting and aware that the case is going to be heard on the 25th, must be given notice.
And in this case, according to the lawyers,
a date was not fixed. A date was not fixed for hearing. He had filed it, and then he had 14 days to file his statement of case. He had not yet filed the statement of case.
Yes.
In the substantive writ, he had asked for an interlocutory injunction, which normally will be followed by a motion for an interlocutory injunction. He hadn't done that yet. And so, there is an argument against why the court will rush and have expedited hearing of the matter when they haven't even benefited from seeing the arguments in the statement of case. There's a case for making that argument.
Right.
That if you had probably waited to see the arguments, to read the arguments in the statement of case, because your statement of case essentially contains your legal arguments. So if you had waited and seen the arguments, maybe that could influence your mind when considering whether that party deserves an interlocutory injunction to be issued or not in his favor. So I have read Tadio's letter to the Chief Justice, and I noticed, and Tadio is one of the very brilliant guys around, and he indirectly alludes to that argument. There's a strong argument in that respect. But because a return date had not been given, and the AG decided to write to the Chief Justice to demand expedited hearing, professionally, if he had copied the party on the other side, it just shows that he's a fine gentleman. If he decides to take them by surprise and then quietly writes to the Chief Justice, he doesn't breach any rule or law, but it's just not fine, if you ask me. But whether he breached the law, no. So, like I said, this
is not legally mandatory when there's no return date.
Yes.
For the other party in the case to be notified when there's an application for expedited hearing.
Yes, and that is why so far nobody has shown any specific rule that says that it must be done. Otherwise, I'm sure would have been shown that by now. But the point really is that, it is in the context of a political tussle, and everybody is maneuvering. And I understand the maneuvering because I cannot deny that I'm involved and part of the maneuvering, being a sitting member of parliament and on the minority side. And it is really because the president has consistently, violated the constitution. Consistently. It started with the death penalty, prohibition that we passed, then the witchcraft legislation that we passed, and the president consistently refused to sign these bills after we had passed them, and refused to comply with the provisions of Article 106 of the Constitution that says that if you are not signing, return it to us and tell us why you are not signing. If you need further advice, refer it to the Council of State and get their view on the matter. And then if you have issues with any provisions, highlight those provisions, make your argument why you think those provisions must be changed one way or the other, send it back to us. And we as a parliament, if we feel strongly about it, then we should mobilize 2/3 of our numbers to pass that legislation. And once we mobilize 2/3 of our numbers to pass the legislation, you are duty bound as a president to sign it. Why a president who controls or claims to control a majority of the members of parliament cannot engage in this simple step and then get his side not to vote with the minority, to make it impossible for us to get the 2/3, which is actually what you should do constitutionally. That's easy. That is easy. I don't know what is informing the behavior of the president. Whether he thinks that he is above the constitution, above the law in this country, and can do as he pleases in such a constitutional democracy. So I may not necessarily agree with people about the legal positions that they take, but in principle, I agree with the fight with the president on this particular matter. That if we don't manage the behavior of this president, he's going to set a very bad precedent for future presidents. Don't forget that this is a democracy and we expect it to endure for centuries to come. And once we begin admitting bad behavior by presidents that think that they are above the law and above the constitution, we don't know where they will carry it. Next time, it has to do with the elections. They may change the election date. They may even refuse to hand over when they have lost it, and that kind of thing. So as a country, we must be vigilant, because as for democracy, you need to protect it. And you have to protect it because creeping dictatorship, it starts small in areas that you think are really not serious. But once people taste the ability to defy the constitution and don't get a response from the population, they increase the dose and they get to a point where the democracy itself will be seriously undermined. So I'm not really very particular about the petty legal niceties. Was returned date there, was returned date not there? When he wrote the letter, did he copy the Attorney General? Did he not copy the Attorney General? Because in the process of these petty minor debates, we lose the major issue why the fight is going on. The fight is going on because Parliament has passed a series of legislation of significant social implications. Why? This country, we have a death penalty legislation. No president has signed that anybody should be executed. So why should we continue having it in our books? So an MP brings a bill. The whole of Parliament goes through the process, spends public money, processes it, agrees on it, votes for it. President says, I won't sign. Witchcrafts. Women are being accused falsely of being witches. Held up in witches' camps. Some have been lynched. For years, governments have been pretending that they are doing something about it. And yet the basic legislative framework that will enable you to take firm action has not been present. Parliamentarians sit and say, no, let's take action, let's take the initiative. We take the initiative, we pass the legislation. People that pretend that they are concerned about witchcraft and then the plight of women who are alleged to be witches refuse to sign the bill. And nobody sees anything wrong with it. Then LGBT bill then comes. And we go through the labor of passing it. The president has a majority of the MPs in that parliament. His MPs join and unanimously vote for it. We send it to him. Then he sits there and writes us a letter to cease and desist, even bringing the bill to his presidency. I mean, that level of arrogance, I have never seen it before. I mean, basic modesty would dictate that you receive the letter from a coordinate branch of government. If you disagree, basic constitutional law, Constitutional law 101.
Yes, 101.
You don't even need to get to second year constitutional law to understand that there are mechanisms open to you as a president. If you don't agree with it, raise the constitutional issues, send it back to us. You have resort to the Council of State. Let them lend you their support. Send it back to us. Demand that we mobilize 2/3 of our numbers. I bet you, if the president is serious, given the hold he has on his MPs in Parliament, then this might never be able to mobilize 2/3 majority. But he wants to approbate and reprobate. He wants to appear, he and his party, to appear to support the LGBTQ legislation in Parliament. And yet, when the bill gets to him at the Flagstaff House for him to append his signature, he will find some way
He said, don't even bring it. Don't
even bring it to me. So they go out and tell the churches and then the mosque and the clergy and civil society, oh, we're not even against it. Oh. Don't you see that our MPs voted for it? Did you see our MPs oppose it? Sign it too, you won't sign it. If you receive it, so don't even bring it near me. I mean, what kind of game is this? So the petty issues, I'm not interested, to be frank with you, and I'm not about to lie for anybody or defend anybody if I'm not convinced about it. But the fundamental issues are there, and I don't want us to lose track of what the fundamental issues are. As for the Supreme Court, I think that we should be careful how we relate to the Supreme Court. We should always take our time and look through things carefully. Because you see, when we destroy the reputation of our Supreme Court, and I'm talking about both the conduct of the judges themselves, is that okay?
Yes, yes.
And then the conduct of the other political actors. If we all behave in ways that destroy the image of the Supreme Court, we will be weakening a very critical element in a functioning democracy, which is the ability of a court to hold the balance. Is that okay? So the court must live above reproach. But at the same time, we those who always walk to them and seek justice must also be careful in the way that we analyze their behavior so that it doesn't destroy that institution. So it's both ways. That's what I can say as an initial take on the matters before you this morning.
And you look at the bigger picture, and well said indeed. Thank you very much, Lawyer Mama Yarga, on this. And then the fact that the premise, in fact, the foundation for what we're experiencing right now is the position taken by the president. And this is where I bring in Lawyer Boadu, because in the end, if a decision had been taken, first of all, this matter would not be in court in the first place. The foundation for where we are now is one, the Attorney General's own advice to the president. The president takes that particular position on the anti-LGBTQ plus bill.
I have something to say about it, if you permit me later on. I have something to say about the Attorney General's advice to the president.
Yeah, no, I want. Okay, I will come to that briefly. Does it now not concern you that in the midst of all this, and then the Attorney General now goes to court, reveals that indeed, as we have gotten to know now, it is not legally wrong what he did to file for an expedited hearing, even though the other party had not been notified? That's one of the concerns that the other party raised, that look, there was no notification of this expedited hearing, to the extent that the lawyers of Nelson Rocks and Dafiam were not in court when this case was heard. Taking into consideration all this, what should be the position of the presidency about a law or a bill that it appears, or is the case, that both sides of the House supported it?
Thank you. Thank you once again. You have asked a montage of questions from the presidency to the judiciary and all that. To begin with, I think, because we're talking to the public and educating the public, the letter asking for an earlier determination of a matter is a letter and not a process which is filed. So let's distinguish that. Once you file, you must serve the other party. But if it's a letter, it's an administrative matter. See, so when you use the word file, then of course it's preempting the service. So it's a letter you write to the registrar of the court. Of course, if you look at Article 125 of the Constitution, it says justice emanates from the people and shall be administered in the name of the Republic by the judiciary, which shall be independent and subject only to the Constitution. And so if you look at just this, it means that in Ghana, it is constitutional supremacy. Now, if you look at clause 3, it says, 4, the Chief Justice shall, subject to this Constitution, be head of the judiciary and shall be responsible for the administration and supervision of the judiciary. And so that if you're writing to the registrar and by several cases in court, it is the Chief Justice that empanels a particular court in respect of cases, then the registrar will by all means have to send it to the Chief Justice for that. And so that's distinguishing filing and writing a letter. And I am very happy about the submission, in part, very happy about the submission of my learned friend and brother, Honorable Ayariga, in a sense that we have to be careful how we rope in the judiciary into our political discourse. As for members in parliament, they're already there for political purposes, political reasons, to agree and disagree, debate and whatnot. You see, the executive is going to take acts and laws and their own policy and going to execute it. So that's also, at least the executive and members of parliament stood on a podium for us to vote for them. So it's purely political. But the judiciary, let's easily go and draw them into our banter. And I'm so glad how he put it. And so it is not a rule of court that when you write, you should serve. But it's nice when you do. There are instances where I've reached court, travel maybe from here to Kovrodium, travel from here, and the other lawyer would have sent a letter. I'm also guilty of that. There are instances where I'm overtaken by incidents that are probably two cases have clashed or something. And so I quickly write to the court. I wouldn't have had a chance to serve the other party. It may be that if you look at the letter, copy the CC, the other party, but he hasn't had a chance. So you drive all the way to court, whether in the same jurisdiction or outside the regional jurisdiction to court, and then when the case is called, just counsel, the colleague has sent a letter and all that. It happens. Yeah. Yes, and that's it. So it's not a rule. It's nice if it's done. It's very nice it is done. So let's not, and then there's this perception of first come, first serve. And therefore, before this was filed first, that should be determined first. There's no rule that says that, because there are several considerations the Chief Justice will have in impaneling, coming out a panel on a particular case. And there are instances where once it's empaneled, if one of the judges is not available at a particular time, the case has to be adjourned. Otherwise, you have to reconstitute the panel and all that. So let's really take the judiciary out of it. And I'm glad Thaddeus, my learned friend, my learned friend, has written to also express a desire for an earlier determination of the matter.
In fact, we have copies of that application. In fact, that the written notice to the Supreme Court. We'll put that on the screen shortly. But then you make a critical point, and which buttresses what the Honorable Mama Ayariga indicated, that yes, it is not legally mandatory that the other party's lawyers be notified when there is even just an administrative letter that, listen, I'm a party to the case, I want an expedited hearing in this case. It is not legally mandatory, but it is only nice or right or maybe fair that you do so. Would you agree with the concerns raised by the lawyers of Lafiankpo, and indeed by extension some members of the NDC, that to the extent that this was not done raises questions about the conduct of the Attorney General?
Not at all. We've just said that it is not legally a requirement. And even before I answer this, I think there's another perception when you were introducing the matter. You seem to suggest that the case is determined.
No.
It is not.
It is the application.
It is only the injunction. So the substantive matter is still before the court. It is only the injunction. And there are instances where you come to court and you stand up to move the application. The judge will say, counsel, I'll rely on all processes that both parties have filed. And in this case, the lawyers for Honorable Lafiamakpo had filed the motion. All right, it was filed on the 20th. I have a copy here. Filed on the 21st of March, 2024 at 10 a.m. Granted that the search for the Attorney General was at 9 a.m. and this was at 10:15 a.m. So it was filed before the court. And so the court can look at, it's not every time that the court will allow you the luxury of coming to display your legal prowess and rely on so and so and annexure so and so. The court in fact, the way things are going now, because there are so many constitutional matters before the court. Some even advocate that we do the US thing and also have a constitutional court. And then, because if we are not careful, the constitutional matters are depriving individuals, and there may be very serious germane cases where a land matter has traveled probably from the district court all the way to the Supreme Court. That takes years. In a report, in 2014 report of the judiciary, they aim to dispose case of as quickly as possible. They gave themselves, and I thought it was probably adventurous. They gave themselves 6 months to dispose of cases. All right, and then this delays the whole process. So if because of a constitutional matter, the court cannot sit on other private members' matters, and several other very important cases, then you see we need to ensure that all parties are heard. Now, so I will not fault the Attorney General one bit in this matter. Indeed, if I take my matter to court, the Supreme Court, I want it to be heard expeditiously. And so if he called for it to be heard expeditiously, there's nothing wrong with that. The statement of case part is about to be heard. Okay? And so, and even the Supreme Court is not in the High Court where you have a long time to ask questions. And Supreme Court, most of the time, you get up and say, my lord, I have filed my statement of case on such and such a date, and I rely on that filed. I have nothing. That's why we toy with this phrase. I have nothing useful to add. Because unless the panel begin to ask you some fine details of the law in respect of the fact, then you have the chance to. So,
but must all these processes be legally minded?
There's this instance where and when you go to the Supreme Court, you don't sleep. You spend nights and nights and look at it, because a question can come from anywhere. Most of the time, when you've done all that, you go, they'll just say that, and the judge will say, okay, come on this date for judgment. You see, so there's nothing wrong with the judiciary. As for the judiciary, I'm very careful. It's not for nothing that for all the coup d'etats that happen.
All lawyers are careful when it comes to the judiciary.
Yeah, because you see, not just that. You see, we drink from the streams of justice, all of us. Yes. It's not for nothing that for any of the coup d'etats, executive. There's something. We are drinking from the Supreme. Let me run this. It's not for nothing that we.
It's for something.
It's not for nothing that for all the coup d'etats, right?
Yes.
Executive is done away with. Yes. Legislature is done away with, but they keep the judiciary. The only time, the closest they've come to is that, okay, we don't have a Supreme Court. Why? Because the Constitution itself is thrown away. So what's the Supreme Court doing? And it ends at the appeal court. All right. But Papa J himself, two-time coup maker, he kept the Supreme Court. Why? Because he knows the importance of it. So when we are going close to it and we're drawing them into the politics, with time, we begin to color them. This is this color, this is this color, and then it doesn't all go well.
I see, but let me add something. Yes. I want us to just find out this. If all the processes have to be legally binding, or at least we have conventions also play a role, I mean, in our governance processes, does it not?
Well, conventions do play a role, but at the end of the day, you need to distinguish between what is legally mandatory, according to the rules, and what is conventional, for which if you did not comply with, there will really not be any penalty. Just that it doesn't showcase you as a gentleman or a lady. And so, like he said, it would have been appropriate for the Attorney General to notify the other parties that he's written to the Chief Justice to ask for an expedited hearing of the matter, so that they are aware. But he hasn't done that, which may not necessarily be gentlemanly. But then his argument is also legally sound.